Good afternoon to all. Thank you so much for taking time this afternoon to join us in this new Education Normal webinar titled A Synthesis of Local Research Evidence on ICT in Education. Is that a problem? Is it okay? Yeah, okay. And the subtitle is How Would IT Inform the New Education Normal? Now, this new Education Normal webinar series was conceptualized by the Learning Sciences and Innovation Group during the circuit breaker in Singapore. It was designed to be a platform to spur ideas and to encourage discourse around pertinent issues in education as we are teaching and learning, accelerated by the pandemic. Of course, the pandemic has an enormous effect on us globally and on all facets of our life. There is a sign that says my internet connection. Is it okay? Can someone indicate? Okay, yeah. So far we are grateful for the positive response to each webinar and for all the speakers who gave their time, attention to explore this issue. Today we have three speakers, our very own Long Xiang, Long Kai, and Peter, our research scientists from the Learning Sciences and Innovation Research Program. Today, they have done extensive review of all the local studies from 2008 to 2017. I shall pass the time to Peter to start off the session. Peter?
Yes. Hi. Thank you, Julie, for the introduction to our LES presentation. Yes, Bryce, we can go to the first slide. The next slide, please. Okay. We just want to welcome you, and Long Xiang, can you go to the next slide? Oh, sorry. Long Xiang, can you go to the previous one, the one of the students? Sorry, because yes, all right. All right, welcome everybody. We know that ICT can open new ways for students to understand the world around them and communicate with others and develop 21st century competencies, right? And prior large-scale studies have shown that ICT can empower learners to promote change in how they learn. Using ICT can develop students' competencies and skills they need to flourish in today's digital world. In a world connected by technology, students are provided new opportunities for learning in and out of the classroom. And ICT with integration with curriculum can be a catalyst to transform learning in the classroom. When ICT is integrated in the curriculum, new pedagogies or approaches to learning can be realized with ICT affordances. ICT affordance refers to the possibilities of action that could be performed by an actor using the technology. These affordance are opportunities that technology makes possible related to teaching and learning. Therefore, there's potential to innovate new teaching practices with ICT. However, we know that technology in itself does not transform teaching and learning. It actually is how teachers combine their knowledge of ICT with their teaching practice to develop innovative techno-pedagogical practices that transform teaching and learning. This report is a synthesis of 126 ICT or educational technology studies that were awarded through NIE's Educational Research Funding Program, ERFP, EduLab, and MOE Academies Funds from 2008 to 2017. Next slide, please. Our starting point for our synthesis is that ICT can be an enabler to improve learning and teaching in Singapore classrooms and beyond. If so, based on a corpus of funded studies, then what are the techno-pedagogical practice that can be enacted to transform teaching and learning in Singapore? So at the center, we look at the techno-pedagogical practices and student learning supported by ICT. It is guided, even very core guided hours inquiry. At the same time, we look into how the teachers in Singapore learn and use ICT to develop these techno-pedagogical practices. In the next layer on building teachers' capacity, we examine how teachers learn to use ICT to innovate these pedagogical practices. What are some transformation in their teaching practice? And lastly, even as it's important to consider the systemic supports such as leadership support that are needed for teachers to design, enact these innovative pedagogical practices with ICT. Thus, this LES seeks to uncover school structures and contributions of stakeholders in our educational system to support the development of innovative practices. Okay, in our next slide, which shows actually the number of projects that were actually awarded even during a time frame. So this slide shows the ICT projects awarded through ERFP, eduLab, and MEF that were completed from 2008 to 2017. All right. So tranche 2 projects actually ran from fiscal year 2008 to 2012, while tranche 3 started in 2013 to 2017. Just to give some background about what the different projects are, eduLab, ERFP, and MEF. eduLab actually is a key program for teachers, researchers, and MOE HQ officers to develop ICT innovations for learning that can be potentially be developed or adapted by different schools across our educational system. So typically in an EduLab project, we have 2 or more schools partnering, and they have about 2 to 3 years to complete the project. So these projects are very ICT. These projects are very practice-based. Also, they require some ICT-based innovation to support teaching and learning in the classroom. MAF is actually a MOE Academies Fund. We actually funded research and development projects that enhance pedagogical practice and professional development of teachers. Right, so they have a more professional development focus. Right, the ERFP is an educational research funding program administered by NIE to fund educational research. So it's more than ICT. So this funding is a broad funding to foster research to design, develop, implement scientific, rigorous, and outcomes-based innovations in classrooms and schools, right? So of these 126 projects were identified our studies, which started from January 2008 to December 2017. They were based on these criteria. It must be locally funded school-based project focusing on ICT innovations and outcome. Second, they use ICT to innovate or improve a teaching practice, student learning outcome, or in learning environment. And third, they must have some qualitative or quantitative or mixed evaluation component in it. All right, so our next slide is passed to you on Long Kai.
Okay, so for my part, I have tried to analyze those prior NIE projects in the dimension of student learning. So according to this NIE projects we have analyzed, so we have found that ICT has provided different affordances in education, such as the self-derived learning, such as the linked representations, etc., and can also try to give the personalized feedback to the students. So based on this kind of affordances, so we can see that innovative design of learning have emerged to benefit students in different ways, such as, for example, encouraging students to ask questions, encouraging students to do the inquiry, guided or unguided inquiries. Okay, and a more prominent point that we want to raise in this session is that with ICT, the way of learning have changed and the context of learning has expanded. So especially the social media and the e-learning platforms has connected connected classrooms and out of school context to provide more learning pathways. So that's a key message we want to convey in this session. And this kind of formal and informal integrated ways has broadened learning pathways to build certain readiness in coping with the current crisis of COVID-19 and to promote home-based learning, blend learning, and calling for more less informal learning. So that's the for this slide. Okay, next one. Okay, So we can see that students has benefit from ICT in different ways. So we can see that it can help students improving their cognitive understanding in different subjects. We can see that benefits in different subjects, in math, in science, in language learning, right? So we call it as multi-facilitated affordances from this kind of diverse designs. And we can see, for example, the online learning has made easier and more accessible with the use of ICT. And we can also see that, for example, by engaging in systems learning, right? And the students can learn in different contexts, in the classroom or out of this classroom. And one special example could be like a critical web reader allows social studies teachers to design curriculum resources and a scaffold to support students to learn of 6 target skills like the so-called making inferences, evaluating reliability, evaluating utility, evaluating claims, etc. Okay, so by all this means, so we can see that students can achieve this kind of disciplinary mastery, and they can also develop cognitive skills as well as the 21st century competency. And we want to highlight that by using this kind of by using this kind of for example, we can put as an example, for example, students can able to produce digital stories using text, they can using joins, images, audio recordings, and by all this kind of means that students can able to work intuitively with digital media and connect relevant out of school experience with classroom learning. So it means that for the previous studies, we have done a wide range of studies that can be linking to the current challenging of how can we make learning to be more connected. So we need to go out of the classroom and design different scenarios that can make learning to be more meaningful and to make learning more connected, and then to make sure that how to connect to the current challenging in the COVID-19, how to make the home-based learning to happen in the current situation. Okay, next one for Longshan, right?
Okay, so that will be my turn. Okay, so can you hear me? Yeah. Can you hear me? I think so. Yeah.
Yes, we can.
Sure. So now what happened here is that we have this, well, just now Long Kai talked about students aspect, and we're going to talk about teachers aspect. And next one for Peter, he's going to talk about systemic aspect of our synthesis. As you can see that we're talking about this issue about TPEC skills. So for those you're supposed to be, I mean, those are attending this webinar are supposed to be familiar with this TPEC model. We see that teachers being they're supposed to have teachers who are going to implement this kind of technology rich or technology enhanced learning in their classes. They're supposed to possess at least 3 basic types of knowledge: pedagogical, technological, as well as content knowledge. But at the same time, they need to pick up the knowledge or construct the knowledge of a whole different combinations of these basic knowledge. So we want them to see the TPEC as a whole, 7 different domains, TPEC skills being improved through the employment of technology, techno-pedagogical practices. So what they did is actually they have to learn by doing, learning by doing, they design, they enact, and they're supposed to reflect as well. And the cycle goes on. so that they can facilitate 21st century learning as well. Since we see actually this kind of technology enhanced learning as kind of a very natural context, to get the teachers to be acquainted to 21st century learning, 21st century teaching, compared to non-technological means. And that's why, because you can see that all these technology affordances, we could empower students to do a lot of things that either they cannot do without technology, such as more this kind of asynchronous communication at different locations at different time, or can at least enhance the learning process. So this is something that the teacher should have a good understanding, good knowledge on this. So we can see that through implementation, through design, through implementation, and through deflection of their technological enhanced learning practices, what happened is that you can see these are brackets, square brackets, we see this number. These numbers are actually referring to the numbers of projects that we see these things happening. Same thing for Long Kai's slide and later Peter's slides. So first of all, the teachers are becoming more sensitive for students' learning needs, especially because of the learning go beyond the classroom. So what happens is that the teacher can trace a student's learning progress even when they're out of school. If the students actually came up to do some homework or maybe communicate their interact with their colleagues, not colleagues, their peers, especially interacting with teachers. So the teachers actually have a more chance to get in touch with students and more sensitive to it. And also, they're more respectful to students' voice because with all this kind of let's say online forums or social media, when teachers are using to facilitate the students to share their opinions openly. So that's why they can be more respectful to students' voices. And also they can relinquish their control because they facilitate safe learning spaces for students to try to tinker, to express, to collaborate freely. This is something that technology can enormously enhance, if not enable, at least enhance. You can do that without technology, but not as good as with technology. But we also want to talk about these teachers, Keen number 4. They are facing challenges. So they need to negotiate challenges in adopting the innovative techno-pedagogical practices. We see these 4 major areas that we kind of distill these 4 major areas: role negotiation, time negotiation, traditional and versus 21st century learning negotiation, and finally other contextual factors. So if I quickly go through what kind of issues they are facing here, like time negotiation, usually there are additional time, of course, needed for the teacher to be engaged in this kind of innovations. They're not just enacting, actually they need to prepare everything and need to do all these post intervention works versus other routine activities. Always a big challenges. Also, there are priority placed on covering syllabus and exam preparation. Particularly having inaccurate perception of that. They think that they have little freedom to do anything other than what the system asks them to do, the curriculum, national curriculum asks them to do. So especially adhering to the fixed curriculum and standardized modes of assessment, that's what they have the perception, and usually this perception is wrong. And also there are no chance or insufficient time for them to reflect and assimilate. This is very important to be a learning teacher. But then they hardly have the time to do that, or they are not even aware that they need to do that. They just enact and just rush for everything, and then at the end, they move on to the next lesson, and so on and so forth. They need to be given time to reflect. And next, we're talking about role negotiation. They refer to teachers' different and sometimes conflicting roles. So we're talking about within classroom. Anytime within classroom, within the lessons, during the lessons. So they are going to be the center, they are being the center, playing the central role. They always be the centralized things that they teach everything and then students just listen to them, or they can be the guide on the side. And teachers versus learners. So teacher learning, teacher themselves are learners. They are teacher learners. They develop themselves, but do they consider themselves that as a learner as well? And so also teachers may feel uncomfortable in giving students greater agency. Some teachers may find this problem. The next thing is that they suffer identity displacement, as they struggle with the multiple incompatible roles that they are expected to live out. There are many roles, and then they are actually not just teaching, not just lesson design, but there are also other administrative work and also and even within classroom, they need to do classroom management and so on and so forth. Yeah, these roles could be incompatible and need to juggle with it. And also we come to the traditional 21st century learning negotiation. Teachers juggle between maintaining traditional exam scores and engaging students in 21st century learning. And at a higher level, there are different philosophies, or we call it epistemology. It means that beliefs about learning, beliefs about teaching. Yeah. So they have different philosophies. Also, whatever they think that, oh, teaching should be, you should do teaching in that way. Students should learn in that way. But then the new 21st century teaching and learning mediated by ICT is a different mindset, different theoretical underpinning. So they are juggle with that. And also the intention is to innovate techno-pedagogical models that may not be transparent to teachers. Yeah. So when the teacher enact the same lesson plan, they may do it differently. Yeah. So and then we move on to the other contextual factors that may influence the effects of the teacher learning. There are other things that, say, for example, their learning efforts, their learning effects are not proportionally enhanced by the number of, let's say, the professional learning communities or network learning communities they are participated in. There are contextual factors such as organizational coordination or strong leadership in the school, cultural congruency and clear directions possess more significant role in transitioning learning across contexts or supporting teachers in their practice as designers. So that's one point. Also, teacher lacks resilience and the sense of fail-safe in dealing with uncertainty of project outcomes. They could easily be defeated by early discomfort due to the challenge faced during the initial state of the intervention. Oh, just surrounding the classroom becomes so chaotic because the ICT come in, then they are scared. They cannot carry on. Yeah, they need to be resilient with handling these things. Yeah, they learn from mistakes, they reflect, and they change, they improve. There are also other things like such as there are also technical constraints or lack of ICT support from a school for free teachers from juggling with technical issues and instead focus on the pedagogy part. Okay, so I want to move on to Peter. Yeah. Oh, okay. So before I should move on to Peter, this is actually I just come up with this diagram where you can distill in these four major building blocks of what happened in this ecology. We have our teachers' belief and perceptions. We have systemic requirements and teachers' learning and PD, as well as teaching practice. So you see the arrow actually shows how one affects another. And we also try to map for each arrow, we map to the 1 or 2 or even 4 of the 4 areas of challenges we're facing. So if you're interested in this diagram, you can go through our, you can get hold of our report and have a look in a greater detail. But essentially, that's how we see these 4. Actually, you cannot differentiate them. You cannot separate them. You have to see them as a whole and try to improve as an ecology, rather than just try to tackle one thing at a time. Okay, so now I think the next slide should be Peter's. Okay.
Sorry, I had to say it off again. Thanks, Long Xiang. This I will actually share about what the systemic findings that we found from the studies. I think in the previous slide, Long Xiang, I think, mentioned about some of the tensions that actually teachers face. Teachers face several of these challenges arising from tensions they experience between systemic requirements of what they need to do, their teaching beliefs, their perception, their teaching practice, and their teacher learning. And these tensions actually influence their decision in when and how they make decisions of using ICT in the classroom. So based on the several systemic studies that we have found, we identify several supports by school teachers in directing, encouraging, and empowering teachers and organizing leadership to foster even more pervasive use of ICT through a whole school approach. Thus, a whole school approach can be an effective way to mitigate some of these tensions faced by teachers, enabling to integrate ICT in the classroom. From the studies, I think teachers have shared even the importance of even a whole school approach for ICT integration and the critical roles that school leaders play in setting the direction. For example, school leaders can align the ICT plans to the school's goals and vision. They could set goal statements which can be cascaded through the schools at different levels for action. The head of departments can be engaged with teachers in integrating ICT in the curriculum at a whole level with a group of teachers rather than leaving it to individual teachers to integrate technology in the classroom. So the school leaders also can set a clear mandate on the use of innovative teaching practices, emphasizing the pedagogical applications of ICT. So these are having a clear direction by the school leaders is actually important to the teachers. Also, school leaders actually can use distributed leadership to implement the pervasivity of ICT. That means they could involve teachers at different levels of using ICT. So what this means that school leaders can adopt a multiple level leadership that will encourage ICT ownership by all the different departments at all the different levels. All right, so from the teacher maybe to the subject head to the HOD, the whole levels are all have ownership of ICT used in the classrooms, right? So in schools, we have actually 3 levels of leadership: the principal, the HOD, even we have the subject head. Even there is also some schools ICT champion, where they will actually work with teachers in integrating technologies in the classroom. Right. So some school leaders, what we found was that they instituted structural supports such as provision of time and resources that actually address some of the teachers' concerns about using ICT in the classroom. So for example, time was freed up for the teachers to work together new ideas. There were schools that had what I call dedicated time, or they set aside time for teachers to meet like 2 hours each week to discuss lesson plans as they design lessons and with ICT into the curriculum. So in EduLab projects, many of the teachers reported the opportunities given by their school leaders to try different approaches to learning with ICT. So there was also a type of support that they were actually given by these teachers for them to experiment, to try and to see how is the use of ICT in the classroom. All right. So lastly, I think teachers also empowered school leaders empowered teachers to integrate ICT by even creating opportunities for professional development. One of the forms of professional development that we found in the reports was professional learning communities. Right, so for example, the EduLab projects, many of the schools will pair up together, they work in groups, and they will actually form like professional learning communities that they get together, discuss, and they brought those ideas back to their own school and apply them in different contexts. So there's a very powerful ways that actually the school leaders empower teachers, and also school leaders empower teachers also encourage experimentation and risk-taking. I think Long Xiang was saying just now about getting teachers even to feel comfortable, not saying that they will be afraid of failure, but they are willing to try new ideas and they're going to take risks in a feel-safe environment at school. So experimentation is actually a very important part of teacher learning. Right. Next slide, please. Another key insight that we found was actually partnership with external stakeholders in system, ecology, can increase actually the teacher's competence in using ICT for learning. And we found that in our educational systems, we found that we form partnerships with schools to level up these teachers' teaching practices by working with them in learning how to design and how to connect research practice, and even how to broaden on their teaching practices with ICT. One of the very interesting unique about the EduLab projects was that I think we had our ministry educational officers from the Educational Technology Division to form partnership with teachers to guide and navigate them through the process of designing and implementing innovative teaching models of ICT. So in particular, this ETD learning designers actually introduce design principles to teachers and knowledge of how ICT can be integrated to lessons. And these design principles provided a good framework for teachers to mediate between the learning theories of design and also design of learning to improve student learning. So actually, in a way that these learning designers supported teachers in the whole process of co-designing the lessons, observing the lessons, and conducting even post-lesson debrief. So actually, teachers experience this full cycle of design, implementation, analysis, which help them to understand the process of ICT learning. And that was actually powerful that they would not otherwise have experience if they had not worked with these ETD learning designers. Another thing that we found is actually researchers in partnership actually help teachers to translate learning theories into classroom teaching practice. And also that in the process, build the teacher's pedagogical knowledge and provide evidence of learning in the classroom. The collaboration with teachers also help the school practitioners to understand and interpret what this policy imperatives. So what does collaboration means? What does self-directed learning means? And the collaboration also actualize maybe some of these policies into classroom teaching that's informed by research theories. So also we found that actually researchers also participated in teachers in many of these PLCs that will help them to really deepen their understanding of the innovations and also help them to resolve differences arising from the various practices of the stakeholders. So this is actually interesting. And also we found that partnerships also happen across teachers across different schools, and that actually helped to broaden the teaching practice of the teachers as they are able to learn from one another from different schools. So what happened was actually teachers reconceptualized many of the innovation ideas to their needs of their students in the school, and they brought that back to their school. And after enacting it, they shared with their PLCs, their experiences in the school. So that partnership provided opportunities for the team members to engage in very rich conversations and sharing knowledge about their experiences of using ICT in the classroom. Right. So Long Xiang, next to you, over to you. Or Long Kai.
Okay, I think we come to the recommendation one. So we, according to the analyzing of the student learning in the prior studies, and we recommend that we need to leverage social media in delivering syllabus, imposed learning objectives, and designing for so-called mixed formality learning experiences. So because among the reviewed local studies, and we have found that a variety of social media tools have been extensively applied in the seamless learning interventions in the primary and secondary schools, and to mediate so-called the cross context. It's just in and out of classroom in both physical and digital environments. And they have been used in the formative assessments and knowledge co-construction. And we can actually list a lot of, we can have a list of projects has been working on this kind of aspects. And so from this kind of studies, so we strongly recommend that students need to use this kind of social media tools. So they need to use that more widely, and even from a so-called primary, even at the school, primary school levels. And we need teachers to facilitate student open-ended ideas, because now we are more and more concerned about how to make the student generate ideas, and we need to have an emphasis on this kind of student-centered learning, and to pay attention to the ideas they have, and then the teachers can adopt more adapted guidance to the students. And also the teachers need to facilitate self-directed acquisition or sharing of resources in and out of the classroom, and also try to give this kind of guided exposure to social networks to educate students in responsible social networking, to influence them ahead of time. So that is something actually we can see certain happenings in the current SLS, right? And the students have more this kind of virtual interactions on the internet, and then they can do this kind of knowledge sharing. That has been a very good channel for them to learn. So then it's like another challenge is like how can we design more purposely for the ICT mediated cross-contextual learning experiences, actually including planned learning. I know that now some teachers or some people may not like the term as so-called planned learning. Actually, a more accurate term can be seamless learning, right? Or one-to-one learning. That will be a more concise term. And by designing all this kind of experiences, actually, especially we learn from our previous projects. For example, the Sims Learning project that has been conducted in about I think more than 1 decade ago, and they have a lot of experiences. Try to connecting the students' experiences, for example, in the classroom, in the garden, and then the students can use the ICT tools to create certain artifacts to show their embodied cognition, right? And they can also use all those kind of tracker apps to make their learning trajectories more explicit to themselves or to the teachers, right? And all this kind of social media tools can make this kind of learning to be more connected, to be more meaningful to the students. I think that will be a very important direction that we as researchers, we need to look at for the next phase. Yeah. Next one.
Okay, so I'll take over now the recommendation pertaining to teachers. So we're talking about we want to promote PD, professional development approaches situated in their teaching practices that nurture analytical, reflective, and adaptive teachers. We'll talk about these 3 points: analytical, reflective, and adaptive. So we can see in some of our studies, we found that one-off workshops are usually less effective. Now we want to situate the PD in actually school context. Some workshops are really trying to do that, I know, but we can do even further beyond just a episodic kind of a workshop period of time. We want to consider how about letting teacher to implement pedagogy over a prolonged period, maybe even through several iterative cycles. We advocate several iterative cycles. Design, maybe we can start with learning, design, and then enactment and reflection, and then we move on. Next round, we redesign, we implement, and reflect, and so on and so forth. And the reflection actually need to be based on assessment as well. The teacher need to design evaluation. Yeah, it's not just running the intervention, end of story, and start reflecting based on the memory or whatever. We need to do some sort of very proper evaluation for the purpose. So we want to engage teachers in practice-oriented research so that they are enculturated in evidence privileging practice. So they want to collect data, collect evidences, so that they can use the evidence to explain whether their design works or their design doesn't work, or maybe the design, maybe they work well intentionally. Based on the intention, maybe design looks good, but then the enactment, there's another story. Yeah. So why the enactment didn't work? So you can base on evidence explain rather than your own let's say your own direct response to whatever you observe. So we also advocate teachers, yeah, to be assigned mentors, critical friends, yeah, maybe from MOE specialists, AST master teachers, or maybe NIE, we as researchers or teacher educators, we can be teachers mentors, individual teachers mentors, to help those teachers who are interested in doing this kind of teacher research to carry on with their exploration of innovative pedagogy. And think boldly, what can the system do better? How about implement teaching research track at K-12 schools? So this is something that we actually will recommend to MOE, Ministry of Education, to consider. A new track for teachers. The teachers in this track may be appraised on their mid or long-term teacher research outcomes. So they need to adjust, we need to adjust appraisal weights. They need to be fail-safe to boost resilience and risk-taking. It doesn't mean that within 1 year you want to see the result, and the result doesn't look good, and then you are doomed in your appraisal. Give them a chance to actually to learn, to reflect, to carry on with the iterative cycles, and then they improve from there. To bear fruit in 2 to 3 years time. So that we want them to be resilient in this case. So this is one possibility. So our key message here is to give rapid changing landscape of new education normal, which is that the teacher must be analytical, reflective, adaptive, and resilient. So we move on to the last slide. Not really the last slide, but the next slide anyway.
Yeah. For recommendation of system, we believe that it's important actually to build capacity even at different levels of leadership that can foster pervasive use of ICT in the schools. So we recommend actually developing programs that will build capacity to enable the schools to coordinate curriculum innovation and ICT creation at school level, distribute resources for teachers and students to enact lessons, and create a culture of innovation. So there's a few ways that we can achieve this. First, actually, schools can do strategic PD planning to assess the concerns of their key personnel, like HODs and teachers implementing ICT and their current professional development needs, such as design capacity or instructional leadership. So this enable schools to even plan for appropriate PD programs for the school leaders, for the key personnel and teachers. And also schools need to take account even the context and the needs of the schools, right? So second is actually schools can identify new in-service we can actually identify new in-service programs for teachers to design and sustain ICT-based curriculum innovations. So even for SART, NIE can offer skills future development courses for educators, even for KP's key personnel, like HODs and teachers, to build their capacity in instructional leadership, to innovate teaching practices with ICT. This can be done at departmental levels, or even for teachers to give them concrete practical skills that enable them to plan, design, implement curriculum innovation with ICT. So lastly also, even the subject HODs have important role in innovating teaching practices with ICT in the departments. They provide instructional leadership even by aligning, translating, and even operationalizing even the school goals and MOE directives for the teachers in the department to implement in regards to current matters. We have actually many policies and even like STP and CCE and all that. Then how do teachers actually help them to do alignment, which actually, as Long Xiang pointed earlier, was actually a point of tension for the teachers. So even schools can help teachers even to and department heads to help do the alignment. So even the programs in our for leaderships can be implemented to promote curriculum innovation at departmental levels. So we recommend that ICT integration into the curriculum must be taken even the IP in the subject department level. If left to individual teachers, we may see inconsistency in the intensity and modality of ICT use for different students for the same subject and level. So to provide a consistency and provide less variation, there must be similar learning there must be actually a consistency among the school teams to work together in co-designing and enacting lesson, yet also taking into account the individual needs of the students, right? So to conclude even our presentation, we know that the past year has been unprecedented, and even with the circuit breaker and with schools we know has gone even as home-based learning, but that also has brought even new initiatives even to our schools even in this year. For example, it was announced that even secondary schools, even every fortnight, there will also be some time that secondary school students will be experiencing learning outside the school through home-based learning. All right, and also the issue of personal learning devices even to secondary school students. So plans to be brought forward that even every student would be equipped with their own personal learning devices. And also, I think the platform also has been coming to more usage. Actually, is our student learning space, and also how could all this be part of this ecology of systems of promoting the use of ICT in the classroom. So what we have done at LES is actually we have systematically reviewed 126 ICT-based lessons, even through the different fundings. And also with the emergence of innovative ICT-supported pedagogical practice, the way and context of student learning we found has actually been fundamentally transformed and extended through the use of ICT. And we also found that teachers have a critical role in how technology is used in classrooms, and hence we need actually to help teachers to deepen their pedagogical practices and also further to strengthen their research capabilities. So system support also is important, and so key to transforming learning and teaching ICT that will benefit and empower every student. All right, so with even this changes that we see like home-based learning, personal learning device, a student learning space, ICT will continue to advance in an ever-changing world, calling our educators in Singapore to embrace ICT and to innovate adaptively even to challenges ahead of us. Right. So I thank you for spending time. I will pass the time to Long Xiang for his last slide.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So I must tell you, actually, that's not all for what we're going to present, because originally we wanted to squeeze everything, the entire report into this panel. And then when we prepare for this webinar, we realized that actually whatever we have are actually too rich. So rich that we think we don't want to have cover everything and then just touch and go every point. And then you're overwhelmed with all the information, but then you probably couldn't reflect much in a sense. So we said maybe we just split it into two parts for this webinar. So we're planning for part 2 of this webinar in July. Sometime in July, we haven't finalized the date and time yet, but sometime in July. So if you're interested to attend the second session, I think you can always refer to the same channel which you receive our promotion of this particular webinar. Yeah, we're supposed to do the same in all this channel. The thing is that we have another set of key insights to share. Some of them may be overlapping today, but there are some things that didn't cover today. Yeah, we also have another set of recommendations emphasizing on research gap, because if you go through this today's webinar, our focus is more on about informing policy and informing practice. Yeah, also maybe for researchers may be interested to find out that you may be able to pick up some ideas to do practice-driven research. But for another set of recommendations, we're going to emphasize more on the research gaps identifies more academic, and also because we are NIE. So we want to discuss about how all these findings may imply how can we improve teacher education practice. Yeah, so do join us again in July. Right. So Shirley?
Yeah. Thanks, Long Xiang. Thanks, Long Kai, Long Xiang, and Peter. Thanks for the very rich and informative sharing. And I think with this, it is a good point to come to a close. And I really appreciate Long Kai, Long Xiang, and Peter, how you come together to share your synthesis implication and recommendation. I do look forward for the next session where we delve deeper into the evidences. And even as you paint the picture of social media use, maybe even in the second session, talk about something that we haven't seen or talk about the challenges. I think those are also important to bring us the next laps of our ICT in education as we continue to seek breakthrough that, and to bring our students a more holistic learning environment. But this has been great listening to your synthesis of 126 studies. With this, I'm going to thank the speakers again, and then we'll close this session. Thank you so much.